This is Life Lessons Lounge, and I'm Igina Gerazi. Here, we explore diverse life stories and the wisdom they hold. Let's delve into the stories that shape us, teach us, and connect us all. Feeling good?
Yeah.
I love that you have the dragonfly there.
Yeah, Labalive. It's really hard to say that word, but yeah, I always have my dragonfly, because that's how I got my trail name. So, dragonflies are my animals.
Yeah?
Yeah, I see them. Like me and Vic were walking down the street yesterday, and I was like, it's a sign. I was like, look, it's a dragonfly. I'm like, if I don't see them physically, like if they're not around, I see them in other ways.
Oh.
Yeah, like
So what's the sign for you? What does it do?
for dragonflies,
Yeah.
I don't know. They've always been attracted to me, but a lot of cultures, at least indigenous culture, like my friend who's indigenous, she said that dragonflies, what they believe in their tribe is that they hold the spirits of the dead. So if there's dragonflies around you, it's someone that crossed over. That's always with you. And then in other ways, they represent transformation
Yeah.
because they're aquatic bugs that spend 2 years of their lives in water, and then they get their wings the last stage of their life. They eat tadpoles and fish and stuff, and then they come out and eat mosquitoes.
Oh, I
A
didn't know.
1,000 mosquitoes a day. Yeah, so you need dragonflies. Yeah, they're just really beautiful and agile, and yeah,
That's amazing.
they're my favorite.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Well, I'm so excited to have Dragonsky
Yes. Yes.
present today. And Dragonsky, you're a professional hiker,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I'm so excited to actually talk together about your life.
Me too. Me too.
So, first, how did you become a professional hiker?
Yeah, so I guess 4 years ago now in 2020, I lost my job. I was a vet tech, and COVID happened. So it's just like chaos in the US. And we all were locked down in like our houses, like especially in New Jersey, because we have like 9.3 million people in a very small state. And so I was like, I can't be confined. I cannot stay in these walls. So I just started like going out, driving around New York, and I found a trail, and I didn't know at the time it was the Appalachian Trail, which runs 2,900 or 2,100 miles. I don't know what that is in kilometers, but from Georgia to Maine through 14
Which is
states.
more than that.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure.
And this guy was like, behind me is the Appalachian Trail. And I was just like, what is this? And he's like, it runs through 14 states. And I was like, wait, there's a trail running through the United States that goes through like top to bottom. And I was like, people actually do this. So at the time I was like very fascinated. So I was like, I'm going to climb this mountain right now. I didn't have like water. I had jeans on. I didn't have the right clothes, but I somehow thought I was going to climb this mountain. So I was just like, yeah, I'm going to climb. And then I realized it was like this steep. So I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work.
When did you realize that?
As I was starting to climb up and it was hot, it was like I was sweating and I was like, I need water. Like I don't have the right shoes. Like I didn't know at the time, like you're not supposed to wear cotton. There's just certain things you shouldn't do when hiking because cotton like retains heat, and like not having water, water is important. So I was like, I'm gonna go home and figure this out. So I went home, I went on the internet, I started doing all this research, and then I was like, yeah, this is cool. I want to do the Appalachian Trail and see what that's about. And at the time, I didn't know how I would do it because it costs like $68,000 to hike for 6 months, 6 to 8 months straight. Like it's a continuous hike. Like you go in town, you get food, you go back out on trail. Like you're just consistently going for months at a time. And so it's like, I don't know how I'm gonna like be able to afford this. And then at the time I met Aubrey was killed in the USA. A black man that was jogging was killed by two white men. And I was like in this group, the Appalachian Trail Facebook group, and I was like, hey, I'm a black gay woman. I live in New Jersey. Like, is this a safe trail for me to hike? And the group just responded in just very hateful ways. Like it wasn't the way that I thought that people were going to respond, but they were like, don't talk about race in this group. Like you're dividing the community. They just say really bad things about my family. I'm like, you don't even know me. Like these stereotypes and stuff. And so I was just like really upset at the time. So it's like, I'm going to write. I'm going to write to the New York Times. I'm going to write to Oprah. I don't care who I need to write to. Like I need to talk about what's happening in this group. And so I wrote this article called Not Just Another Hiker. And the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, which is the organization which like takes care of the trail, like the president reached out to me. I don't know how, he got my whatever. Somebody must have told him what was happening in the group, but he's like, I'm an Indian man. I hiked in 2001 after 9/11. He was talking about the ways that he was treated on trail. And he's like, your article is so like real and beautiful. Like, we want to sponsor you. And so that kind of started, it just all just started literally from me writing an article because I didn't know any, I didn't hike before this, before 2020. I was a vet tech and a social worker. So I was like, really? Like, you guys want to like, so they gave me money and then like all these, it went viral, my article, and people just started coming to me like, what you're writing about is really important. And I just started getting more sponsors and more support. And so I was able to do this through hike. And
Wow.
from there, it just kind of took off. That was like my first hike. Like, I trained for, I would say 6 months because I knew I wanted to start in winter because I love snow. So I would just be like in my backyard. I have a tent. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna try like what it feels like to sleep outside. Like, if I'm cold, I would go back to the store and like, I need a different sleeping bag or I need to adjust something because when I'm in my backyard, I could just go back inside and go to my bed and just be like, we'll try again tomorrow. So I built up all these skills on my own, and then I went out and I was like, I'm gonna do this solo, and I ended up doing the majority of the trail alone. I met people, of course. There's like 4,000 people hiking that year along the way, and then from then it just became like this career because I couldn't stop after the Appalachian Trail, which I did in 2021.
How long did that take? 6 months?
It took me 8.5 months. I started February 21st, 2021, and then did November 17th, 2021. Yeah.
And how much training did you do before?
6 months of like training. Yeah.
Okay.
Just like hiking and setting up my gear.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how was it?
That trail was not particular. Now that I look back at my resume of hikes, I'm like, and when I look back, because I wrote a book about it, I was like, it wasn't my favorite trail. Like, it was a great experience, I guess, to see like the landscape and the mountains because I had no idea there were so many mountains on the east coast of the United States. Because people think of like California, they think of Utah or Colorado. They don't think of like Georgia or New Jersey or Maine or even New Hampshire, which has the smallest, deadliest mountain in the world. People don't think about mountains on the east coast. So it's like really cool to experience that, but for me, it was really hard because there's just a lot of hate and a lot of racism hiking through the USA. So, like, going especially through the South is really scary, particularly because there's like Confederate flags and just hate, just a lot of hateful stuff. Like, people would just like call me names and stuff. And then, like, I would feel safe when when I got to New Jersey, because that's my state. I'm like, we're right by New York City. So when I got to New York, I was like, oh my God, finally diversity. Like, it's Chinese people, it's Black people, it's Hispanic people, it's everybody. And I was like, this is great because I had so many, like, just really not pleasant experiences, even interacting with other hikers who just be like, oh, like, we know who you are. Like, they would see my article online and they're like, you're the racist one. And I'm like, I'm the racist one for writing about racism. Like, and it just like kind of impacted my hike because there's times like I had to hide in the woods one time in Tennessee because there was like a hostel. And I thought, oh, I want to go to this hostel because it's really cold and I don't have any food. And I start walking down the street and I'm like, oh, people are watching me. And there's a Confederate flag. And then someone wrote, the owner uses the N word. Like, we have our own little like map. It's non-satellite, but you can leave comments. And people were like, oh, owner uses the N word a lot here. And like, someone had to pick me up from that spot because I had to hide in the woods because I couldn't cross the road because I'm like, people are literally, I don't know what's about to happen here. So there's just like a lot of scary experiences. But I think it was like a really eye-opening experience. I mean, I already live in the USA, so I know there's a lot of race. I mean, I'm Black, so just I experience this pretty much on a daily, weekly basis of racism in whatever type of form. But it's just like, okay, yeah, this is really scary. Like, it's so beautiful, which is the why. Like, it's such a beautiful country in terms of landscape. Like, I loved it. I loved being in nature. I felt like I shed like this layer of myself. That's why I'm like, yes, my name is Shalita, but I prefer to be called Dragonsky because I'm like, I got that name through hiking and that's who I am. I'm like, I learned to be one with the trees and learn to I feel like I am nature now. I'm like, I'm back to my roots. I'm away from the matrix. So I learned that lesson and learned like just to be simple with things. I'm like, I need food, water, shelter, and love because that's all you carry on the trail. You carry 2 pairs of clothes. You carry a water filter. You carry 5 days of food on your back or 6 days of food on your back. You've got bears. You've got all these other animals, just all types of animals, and you're just like living among them as you're hiking. And so that was the great part. But I think overall, I'm like, I don't think I would do that trail again just because of that side of the USA. And I've hiked other trails in the USA that were a little bit definitely different. But it's like you have to think about the states that you're going through. And so that's why there's not a lot of black people. I don't think I only saw there was like three black girls that I was hiking with. They're little girls, like 9, 13, and 8, because my friend adopted them, and like we would stick together because she's like, yeah, I hid my kids in the same spot that you hid. So like we would bond over things
Oh my
because
God.
she's like, yeah, I had to watch out for my children a lot.
But how do you overcome those moments of fear when you're out in nature and on the trail?
For me, I guess it sounds really crappy, but for me, with racism, I'm just like, I'm used to this now. It's more of just like being more vigilant and just really knowing like my surroundings. And like I said, getting out of there when I was in Tennessee, I was like, I had a dragonfly. That's what I call my fans, my followers. I call them dragonflies. Like one of them, she knew I was going to have a hard time there. So I called her. So I had like support. So I was like, hey,
Nice.
can you come get me? And she's like, I knew you would have problems here. You know, and she helped me. She like took some of my stuff. She helped me buy groceries and just like there's some good because you have trail magic. You have people like leaving beers out and stuff. So just seeing like and meeting people like her, kind of like I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna never let racism stop me from doing anything
That's good.
or just hateful people because at the end of the day, I confronted the hate when I wrote the article. And if I didn't write the article, I'm like, I don't even know if I'd be here right now because, like, with the hiking career, because it took me turning the pain into power. And I was like, I confronted my fear of writing an article or like addressing, people and being like, hey, I'm scared of doing this and seeing the outcome of it. But I was like, I still kept going. And also, just, I don't know. I feel like for me, I've never let fear stop me. Like I've been afraid of things. I'm afraid of the dark. I'm afraid of thunder and lightning. And I hike. I mean, I camp by myself, and I'll be in there like, oh my god, what's that noise? Like just hyper vigilant and stuff. But I'm like, at the end of the day, I have one life, and I can't let fear like define that. And so I've just always kind of lived with that mindset, or tomorrow won't be like this. It's something that I said to myself on trail because I'm like the majority of the time I'm like if I'm in the woods I'm all right. It's more so when I have to go through the towns where I'm like, oh god, I have to confront the town and see people and then they're going to look at me this way or whatever. But I think for the most part, because like I could go into town and like kind of come out of town, I'd just be like, I'm back in the forest, I'm okay. Like I would just remind myself I'm okay and just one step at a time.
Hmm. Wow, I'm impressed that you have so many fears, and especially in nature in the dark. Yeah, to confront those, it feels huge, right? And also
Yeah.
because you're alone as well,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, congratulations.
Thanks.
Well done. I really, yeah, I'm impressed. But is it the same? Like, I know you have hiked so many. Like, what about the other hikes that you have been through? Right?
uh,
Like, how was the experience?
Yeah, like I just did the Camino, the
Yeah,
Camino Portuguese to Porto to Santiago, Porto to Santiago. It
amazing.
was the greatest thing I've done.
Hmm.
I've like made many vlogs on YouTube, just sobbing. There was like times I would go through the eucalyptus forest because I didn't know there were eucalyptus trees in Portugal, but I just be
Yeah, there are
like,
many.
I am so happy right now. Like no one cares because you see a lot of graffiti too, and it's like Camino Diversidad, like very like the Camino is diverse. And you
Oh,
see like rainbows and stuff like rainbow benches.
oh,
Yeah, lots of like cool like graffiti art. And so I was like, I'm accepted here. No one cares. Like Portugal has been in Spain too. I'm like, mostly Portugal. People have just been like so nice. You're like, bom dia. You walk by. Are you a camina, comitent? Like, are you doing the Like, are you a pilgrim? And people are just so welcoming. And people also do leave beers out for you too.
beers.
Yeah, I saw
Oh,
that in Spain. Like, it was like somebody left like a whole thing with beer and water. And they're like, for the pilgrims,
how nice.
and so it's just like being here and being in Portugal, I feel like the energy is way different, and also the trail is way more diverse because you have people from Germany. Mostly, I saw was a lot of people from Germany. There's Brazilians. There's people from Italy. I met people who live in Portugal, Spain, like Australia. Everyone is doing the Camino, and so it's like nice hearing different stories of people. Being around people who spoke languages, I have no idea. I was like, I've never heard of this. I met people from Slovenia. Yeah, and this girl's like, you should move to Slovenia. I was like, I don't even know where this is. And she's like, yeah, if you look at it, and it's just like nice. And also, it's very woman dominated. So that's a difference also between hiking in the USA. I'm like, women are minority on the trail. On the Camino Portuguese, I can only speak for the Camino in Portugal. It was like I would say 90% women. Like seeing guys, you see them, but they're like a small minority. So it's
Mhm.
just nice to be surrounded by like women. And I was like, this is like girl power. Like this is awesome,
That's amazing.
to just like I'm like, wow, I like when I did the Appalachian Trail or the Continental Divide Trail, when I finally saw women, you're just like we would just cling to each other because we're like, oh my god, we're so tired about we just want to have our spaces too,
Yeah.
and be able to connect and talk about issues in our bodies and blah blah blah. So it's like really nice and seeing the beach because I think I did all the routes. I did the literal route out of Porto, which hugs the coast. So you go through Montichinos. I don't know how to say Montichinos, but you go through the coast and then you go to the coastal route, which is not on the coast, but it's called the coastal route. And then I went central, which is more inland through the villages. And then I did the spiritual variant, which adds 73 kilometers on a boat. So yeah, you walk like 20 kilometers and then you take a boat. And it's
Does
so,
it count?
yes, because you get a stamp.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
as long as you have to get 2 stamps a day,
Ah,
but it's just like nice and seeing other pilgrims. And also, I really respected the fact that you could hike with someone and you could be like, okay, I'll see you later. And nobody would have a problem with that. They weren't like, oh God, like, why are you leaving? Like, people just kind of let you have space to do your own
yeah.
thing. And so I found myself hiking alone a lot in the beginning, and then I ended up meeting friends more so towards the end. And I just felt really happy and was sad. I mean, when I got to Santiago, I did a lot of crying. I didn't know it was going to hit me like that. It was just like, I just hiked through my first country, 2 countries now, Spain and Portugal, and just like seeing not really, it only took me 14 days, which is faster than I thought it would take. Because I'm like, how many kilometers? I don't know what that I was doing in a day. Sometimes I guess 30,
30. Yeah.
30. Sometimes I'd be doing 10. But it was just more of like the experience and really getting to know Portugal and like sitting in the, yes, like they say, you sit down and you drink lots of wine. That's why people like the Camino because you stay in hostels, you're in a bed every night, you can take a shower, you can drink vino and eat. And so I had a really pleasant time. It's
Oh, that's nice.
my favorite trail of the, I guess, 3 trails I've done now, 4 trails. This would be what I did in Nepal last week would be 4. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. But what does it take to be ready for a trail besides the physical part as well? Because I heard you were trained for 6 months. What
Yeah.
else?
I think it's all mental. Honestly, it's more mental than like physical. Yes, you want to take care of your body so you don't get injured, but I feel like it's all a mental game because mentally, it's like when I was hiking the Continental Divide Trail, I'm like, I'm in grizzly bear country. There are cougars
Exactly.
around
Whew.
me. In Colorado, you're like 4,000 meters. So you have lightning to contend with, which is why I'm actually even more afraid of lightning. Because I'm like,
Oh
when you're up
my.
on a ridge and there is lightning and you
Yeah.
are the tallest object, it's just taught me really how small I am and just to be very humble with it. I'm very humble about nature, but it's just different challenges for me. And like I feel like to be in grizzly country, especially alone, because they always say go in groups, because grizzlies, like most bears, are very protective of their cubs, and males are protective of carcasses. And you have cougars, and you're not going to see a cougar. Like you're not going to know if you get killed by it because they're cats, so they just like pounce on you
Oh my
and
God.
stalk you. So there'd be times I'd be hiking through the desert and I'd just be like just looking, because like the thing about cats is you have to make eye contact with them. So I just feel like, oh my god, like are there any cats? But it's just like a mental game, and also like being alone. I think I was alone for the longest 2 weeks. I didn't see anyone because that's the most like desolate trail in the United States and the least hiked one. So I was like, There was one day I was like, someone's going to show up. Nobody would show up for 2 weeks. I didn't see a single human. And I just was like, yeah, this is a mental game because I have to cross this river 217 times. It's like one part where you keep crossing a river, like you just keep crossing it because it snakes. And I'm just like, all right, crossing the river again by myself, which can be really dangerous, you know? And I just feel like, okay, it's not going to always be like this. So it's just like a mental game. And like also dealing with my depression and my anxiety and stuff. I'm just like, really have to like stay like in therapy and just really ground myself a lot and do a lot of like practices. Like I do yoga, and I don't say more so meditation, but I'm like I do I guess some type of meditation because I'm like, okay, there's 5 things I can see, there's 5 things I can touch.
Mm.
Just keeping myself like grounded and also realizing like if I'm having a really bad day with my mental health, like taking care of myself was part of my mental game there. So I would there's days where I wouldn't hike or I just do like 2 miles or a kilometer, and I'm like, well, this is all I could do today. But I did something, and just like it's really just a mental game because you have to think about yourself and what if you have any medical or mental health issues, and then you have to think about the elements. And for instance, like on the Appalachian Trail, it rains. It rains like every day,
Mm.
and people quit so much because I'm like, there's a point where you're tired of your feet being wet, right? You get blisters and stuff, and you're just soaked, and nothing's drying out because guess what? The next day it's raining, and you have to mentally tell yourself, like, I'm gonna keep hiking through this rain, like pouring rain. Like the other day, it was pouring here, like rain
But
like
where
that.
where do you find that motivation, that strength? Like, yes, you keep telling
Yeah.
yourself that, but is there because you see, something at the end, or
Mm.
what's that motivation?
I think for me, it's because like I feel like for me personally, it's because I say I've been climbing mountains my whole life. Like I've been through a lot of trauma. And so because I've been through a lot of like trauma, especially childhood trauma, like for me climbing mountains isn't compared to anything that I've had to climb in
Mm.
my life, confronting trauma and healing as an adult. And so that's my motivation for me. I don't know for other people, but for me, it's just like, okay, I've been through some hard stuff,
Mm.
like some really hard, intense stuff. Like, what is another steep mountain? You know, and
Mm.
that's what gets me through. Because I'm
Mm.
like, I feel like I've been through the hardest stuff in my life, and so that's why the mountains don't. I mean, they mean things to me, but I'm like, I give them everything because I've taken so much was taken from me from trauma. And so that's how I motivate, like, that's what motivates me.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's just also like having mental illness as well, like having depression, which is why I hike a lot because I'm like, the thing is, when I'm hiking mountains, I'm choosing to live every time. Like when I'm on a ridge like this thin that has drops on the side, like in Nepal last week, like very sharp drops. I'm like, every time I make a step, I'm choosing to live.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, because
Mm, that's touching.
I could fall off this mountain. I could just, with depression just tells you you want to die, you're worthless, all these things. And I'm like, no, if I'm hanging off a mountain, I don't want to go down there in that gully or that valley.
Mm.
Yeah, so mountains for me have just been like really life saving. And I see them as part of my therapy and my growth and my medicine, to be honest.
Oh, that's very touching and so courageous.
Mm.
So courageous. And because what's really, like that you do something about it, what's really inspiring, right?
Hmm.
And that you really see very clearly that this is what I'm doing. I mean, it is my life and I'm taking charge of it,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. Really, yeah, it's very inspiring. I'm touched. So that's nice. So does it help? So the hiking, it seems like really it helps also with depression and mental health, right?
It can. Sometimes it can be actually the worst for me because the Appalachian Trail, and I wrote this in my book. I was like, there's one time I was on this pass and I was literally just sobbing. And I was like, I could just end it right now. And I'm like, I'm alone. No one would find me. And then I'll get really into dark thoughts. So it can be a double edged sword
Mm.
because I can be isolated. And then that's sometimes when I really start like snowballing because depression also seems to be an isolator. and I'll be like, oh, I'm away from people. Like, I can't burden anyone. Like, I can't do this. And it's just these twisted, contorted lies that my brain is telling me. So I've been on that end. And then other times I'm like, I'm free. Like, I have ADHD. If I want to go jump into this river spontaneously, or whatever, I want to go eat this plant. I mean, I know, don't eat,
No,
don't
no,
don't do
no.
that. But I do know some plants. I do know a little bit about
Oh,
foraging.
that's good.
So I'm
That's
like, if
good.
I just want to eat this onion right now, I'm gonna eat this dandelion or something. I'm like, if I want to just run up the mountain and be, like, I can just be me.
Yeah.
And I'm
that's good.
like, nature isn't judging me; it's humans, right? So I feel like I'm more like able to like stim. I'm more able to be sensory and
Mm,
touch stuff. And like, it's not a problem. Like, I can just do what I want. I'm like, if I need stimulation, I have the stimulation. If
mm.
I don't want stimulation, I can kind of retreat back in my tent. But it's not like being in, like, walking, for instance, in the city, and I'm like, oh my God, there's people everywhere. And I'm just like overstimulated to the point where I want to retreat because it's just too much sensory for me.
Yeah.
But I feel like it helps with, in some ways, like with ADHD and anxiety, because I'm like, I'm constantly going and I have so much energy from ADHD. So I'm just like, yeah, if I want to hike like 30, like I said, 40 kilometers today, I'm like, I can keep going because I don't care. And it doesn't matter. Like, who am I answering to? I'm answering to
Yeah,
myself,
exactly.
So it's just like, I feel like I'm not like confined in a box and I'm like, oh, I have to work or I have to do something. It's like, no, be free. But depression, I feel like, has been hard regardless. Like, I'm just like, I can get really into my head, and then some days I'm all right. And I think the climbing part of the mountain is what helps in terms of depression because I'm exerting so much. So it's like, I don't know, because I get a high. Once I summit a mountain, I'm like, yeah, I feel high. Like, this is a great drug. Like, I'm on cloud nine, and it's a feeling of accomplishment. Of course, it's half the mountain because you still have to come down. That's not climbing the whole mountain, but it helps with like endorphins in that
Yeah.
sense and adrenaline. So there's that. So again, it's a double edged sword.
Mm.
Yeah.
But what about when you're not hiking? How do
Mm.
you deal with depression?
When I'm not hiking, which is hard, I just, well, I play some video games sometimes. I really try to stay in touch with my friends
Yeah, that's
because
good.
I tend to be an isolator. I have a dog. She is
Mm.
actually prescribed to me, a psychiatric dog. So she helps me a lot, like with my anxiety and stuff. Like, anytime, she doesn't lick ever, but if I have a panic attack, she'll come over and lick. And so does my cousin's dog, the Rottweiler. Like, she'll come through the night and check on me, and they'll both like
Oh,
circle around me. Yeah, they're really like intuitive about like how I'm feeling, the dogs.
how nice.
Yeah.
But you don't have them when you travel.
No, I don't, which makes it harder
Yeah,
because I'm like, I'm away from my dog.
yeah,
So for me, it's like really keeping in touch with like my social system, like
yeah.
connection. Like, here, I'm glad I have Vic. I have friends. Thank goodness, because I'm like, the other day I had a bad day at the dentist, and I was like, I need a hug, like tengo un
Oh,
brazo. Yeah,
cute.
and I went to Ilga, and everyone like gave me a hug at the LGBT center here, and because they remembered me from December, and they're just like, oh no, and they're like, give us a hug, like, what do you need? So it's just nice to have support.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, when I'm at home, I literally just try to stay in therapy as much as possible. I do ketamine treatment for my depression with my doctor because that's legal in the US. And I find that to be exceptionally helpful because I've been on
Mm.
31 drugs and they have not helped. So just going through that process of like going through drugs, going through hospitalizations, and finally finding something that works, which is the ketamine, has really changed my life because I've been doing ketamine infusions for, I think it's been a year now. And it's
Mm.
the first year of my life where I'm like, wow, this is what it feels like to not think. Like, I can't get to a dark spot. My brain will not let me go down there. It just like blocks it. So I'm like, I'm able to process things and regulate my emotions more. And so I tend to just,
But does it also block the highs, like the
mm-mm.
positive high, or only the
Yeah,
lowest?
because ketamine works by actually repairing brain cells. So it's one of
Oh.
that's why I feel like it's not really, I don't know why it's not really talked about in the US, but because it's more of a cure than a treatment. And
Mm.
that's why I think it's not talked about because the medicines treat, where the ketamine is actually repairing neurons so that they can talk to each other again. Because when you look at a depressed brain and a normal brain, you can see the differences, like scientifically, biologically, like what's going on. And so, like with the ketamine, it's like it feels like, as I say when I'm tripping, because you do trip, it's ketamine. You know, like when I'm on these trips, I'm just like, I see myself in this dark box, right? And this is my brain, but I'm running through it. There's like a moment in every like ketamine session. I'm like, all right, 3, 2, 1, let's go. And it feels like I'm diving into my head and I'm just like fighting off the depression. And it's really cool because I come out and in this session, I'm just like, oh, all I feel is love for myself, like things I couldn't feel, and I'm able to absorb the therapy. Because I'm like, before that, without ketamine, I was like, even going to therapy wouldn't help. Because I'm like, how do you expect someone that's not feeling well to absorb
Mm.
information and then put it into practice if their brain is like in a fog? You know, people are just like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I'm like, if someone's in the intensive care unit, you're not going to tell them to do this if they're like they're not there.
Mm.
You can't expect them to do things until they're healthy, at a healthy state, to go and like do PT or do these things. And that's the same when it comes to depression. And so I feel like that really helps my dog and staying in touch with my friends. And then I write, and sometimes I draw, but not really draw so much. I just tend to journal a lot about my feelings.
Really nice.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So you have written a book that I would love to read.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry that I haven't read it.
It's okay.
So is there another book coming?
Yes, I want to write another book. I think I will write about the Camino. Yeah. I thought I was going to write about my whole Triple Crown experience in the U.S.
Triple Crown.
Which is, the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, and the Pacific Crest Trail. Like, doing those 3 trails equal 8,000 miles.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so I do the Pacific Crest Trail hopefully in March of next year, and that'll be my Triple Crown. But I feel like the Camino really changed me in a way that I want to write about it. And just like hiking through Portugal and what I saw and the kindness of the people, and just talking about, there's so much history here and stuff. So I was thinking about that. I don't know what else. It just like flashed across my mind when I was doing it. I don't really know what else I want to write. I just like, it just comes up, and I was like, I'm just going to write about the Camino. I don't know if it might have like underlying tones with my uncle because he has ALS. Because I like to, and like my book I wrote, it's like, it's not just about hiking. It's about trauma. It's about mental illness. It's about being Black and coming to terms with what it is to be a gay woman, you know? So there's like 2 stories. It's memoir. So you have hiking, but you also have me confronting childhood trauma as I hike. And these 2 parallel stories happening back and forth. So I think I want to keep on with that theme and have some type of backstory with the Camino, but I'm not sure what it would be yet. But I think I'm leaning more towards my uncle who has ALS and dementia, because there's no cure for that. So, I mean, it's terminal. ALS is just a slow terminal illness, and it's been really, I haven't been processing it so well. So I'm just like, I would really like to talk about this. Like, you know, having someone who raised me go from seeing this healthy man, and now he's like 80 and he's just, I'm like, this is really hard, you know, and just talking about the continuum of hiking and confronting these things and grief, because I think grief needs to be talked about. And even there's I don't know what it's called, but there's a type of grieving where you're literally watching someone slowly die, active grieving or something. So I just kind of want to talk more about grief and hiking and why I did the Camino. Yeah.
Wow. I'm really looking forward to read both of them and maybe more. It's coming up.
Yes.
I mean, what I would love to hear is also, how has it grown you? Like all this hiking, how has it grown you into the person you are today?
Yeah, I think especially with hiking and hiking solo, I've gained a lot of confidence. This is now, like, from my first trail, the Appalachian Trail. I was living in an apartment. Before that, I went and brought a van. I got rid of everything. I was like, why am I keeping all these material things? Materials don't mean anything. Everything is impermanence, is what I learned in Nepal with Buddhism, right? I'm just like, nothing is permanent. Why do I have 50 pairs of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger and all these like just materialistic things, except the PlayStation 4? Okay, the PlayStation has to stay because games, again, they help me. But it was just like a shedding of self, which is why I'm Dragonsky now. It's like, it's this shedding of identity, of this old identity, into this, like, as I said with the dragonfly, A dragonfly in water is called a nymph. They spend 2 years of their life there. And then after, at the last 6 months of their life, they get these wings in these colors. And they can see, they have 30,000 eyes, so they can see in every color. They have one blind spot. They can fly in every direction and do all these miraculous things. And I'm like, that's how I feel like I've been, or like a butterfly and a chrysalis, like a caterpillar. Like I feel like I've spun a chrysalis and now I'm getting my wings and I'm coming out and I've emerged to this new person. And this new person doesn't care about materials. This new person cares more about time. I've learned how to be more intentional and like about my time. And like, I'm like, it's really not about, like even going out to dinner where people are all on their phones and stuff. I'm like, I don't do that anymore. I'm like, all we have is time. That's what I learned from hiking. And what, like, again, what am I doing, So I just started maximizing my friendships, like pouring a lot more, of course, what I can pour, but into my friendships and really spending time. Like I prioritize a lot more time with my friends and really spending time with people because I'm like, we really don't know what tomorrow or the next hour holds. Like I've seen a lot of death in my life too. That's part of the trauma. Like I've seen so much death that I'm like, I'm ready to live. And that's what the Appalachian Trail taught me. And then through hiking even more trails. I'm like, I came to Portugal in December by myself. That's my first solo time. I didn't know I could do that, but I was like, I hiked a trail solo, so I can travel solo. And so that's really built on my confidence. And I was terrified, don't get me wrong. When I was here in December, I was like, oh my God, like, what am I doing? I was on the plane, like, why am I doing this to myself?
But how
Like,
did you get that idea?
what, to travel
Yeah,
solo?
yeah, no, also to come to Portugal as well.
I had a list because I'm trying to immigrate of countries that I wanted to
Ah.
move to, and I was like, Canada was number one. They rejected me. Thanks, Canada.
Oh,
Nah. So Canada was number one, and then I was looking at Portugal by the time I was dating someone, and they did not want to go to Portugal actually. So I'm glad we broke up in that sense because I wouldn't be in Portugal because they were just like, I would never go to Portugal, and they would move to Canada with me. So Canada rejected me, and I was like, I'm just gonna go see what Portugal is about because it said it was the fifth safest country for women and stuff, and I'm like, okay. I'm gonna try solo travel. I don't know. I just gassed myself up one day. I was like, I've already hiked solo. I've done it twice. I've fallen off a mountain. I survived.
oh my God.
I've done things, alone. I'm like, and I studied in China like 10 years ago. I was living in China and studying at Beidou University. So I was like, I've been out of the country. I just haven't done it alone, but I felt confident because again, I'm confronting lightning storms. I'm dealing with grizzlies. I'm dealing with weird men in the woods. All the things you can think of that happens in the woods, I've been dealing with it head on, right? So I was just like, yeah. And then when I came to Portugal, after lots of research, I was like, I think the first day I was like scared. Like my eyes were just open like an owl. I was like, what is this place? And then I'm in the house that I'm staying at right now. And it's such a homey environment. So I was able to meet so many solo travelers, so many women who also like, they're like, I've been solo traveling. And I was so inspired. And so like I met like five other solo travelers. We rented a car. I didn't rent it. They rented it. Sorry, because I wasn't driving. But we drove around, went to Nazaré and Cascais and Obidos and Braga and everywhere. And I was like, well, this is what it means to like be able to do your own thing. Like if I want to go sit out in the grass and sleep for 7 hours, I can go sit out in the grass and sleep for 7 hours. It was just like this newfound freedom. Like I knew I had the freedom from hiking because that's what I found in hiking is like this is no one's rules. If you want to speed through the trail, because people will be like, oh, you have to follow the white places, you can't do the blue places. They're still the same trail, but they're like, oh, you're not a real through hiker. And I'm like, what are these rules and expectations that you're setting for yourself? And also, you're following society because that's the USA. There's got it. I'm like, you're the person who makes your own rules. And I learned that through hiking. I was like, I am the person who makes the rules of my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
What
there's
a
things I
liberation.
can't control, but like I adapt with the things that I can, and the things that I can, you have to kind of, it's like nature, and that's what nature taught me too. I'm like, you are at mercy of nature. I cannot stop the lightning. I cannot stop a grizzly from being in my, yes, I keep my food away, but I'm like, if I walk into a grizzly, I have to know what to do. You can't just sit there and be like, oh my God. You have to have bear spray. You have to be prepared for the next step. And so I think that's everything that's come out of hiking has led me now to here to Portugal, and now being in Portugal for the second time for 2 months. And I'm like, really have been just kind of piggybacking off of what I did in December. This is the first time like I've ever traveled around the country solo, like taking buses. When I took a bus from Braga to Jerez, I was like, I was stressing out in the bus station. I was like, I don't speak enough Portuguese. Like, what am I doing going into the middle of Portugal, you know? But I was like, I'm learning a language. It's so uncomfortable. I've said things that are not pronounced the right way, and people were like, "What did you just say?" You know, and like people were like, "What?" You know, and it's like it's embarrassing. It's
Yeah.
like learning a language is all the emotions, and so I'm like, I am pushing through these things with the anxiety that I have, and I'm not letting it define me. I'm like, I'm just going to keep going forward. And I think that's what hiking has really translated to. It's now translated to solo traveling. So moving to this country by myself, because I'm like, there's no one else but me coming from New Jersey across the water. I'm like, not saying goodbye to my friends. Like they're there, they're really supportive. But I'm like, I'm doing this on my own. And this all started from hiking alone.
Oh, how courageous.
Mm,
Really. Like super courageous and brave. Well done.
thanks.
Well done. So if someone's hiking for the first time,
Hmm.
what are some advice you would give?
I would say if you're hiking for the first time, just always research like the trail you want to do, because I find people get into a lot of dangers because they'll just wander up, oh, this trail is accessible. It doesn't mean that it's safe. Like
Mm.
people die all the time because they go, especially in Colorado, there's like a peak there. It's in the national park, and people go up there and die all the time because they're just like, oh, it's very easy to get to. And I'm like, no, research the trail that you want to go on. Know if there's rocks, if it's like steep, if there's just ice on it or anything, just to make sure that you're safe. Make sure you have water, because we all need water because we're living beings. Make sure you have snacks. Always bring a headlamp, some first aid stuff like bandages and stuff, and always let someone know where you are,
Mm.
especially as a first time hiker, because it's so easy to get lost or to get overwhelmed or to get scared. But it's really nice to tell someone, hey, this is where I'm going to be if I don't show up at, X time with this buffer. Please check in with me. Or if it's like past a certain time, like please notify the authorities,
Mm.
because, things just happen like that. People get lost all the time. And it's always nice to start with friends if you can.
Mm.
I don't think I had friends to start with. I mean, I made friends. If you have like a hiking group like in your area, it's really nice to like join with a hiking group, because you can learn so much from others, and there might be people who are also beginning. But it's a really good way to make friends. Yeah.
That's amazing. But what if you are not connected, during the hike?
Mm.
How do you give this information? I'm just thinking, like first level thinking.
If you're not like connected to hiking groups.
No, no, what I mean, if you don't have internet, if
Oh.
no phone, no nothing, like, how do you let these people know?
Oh, if you don't have anything, I mean, if you're like in the countryside and you have
Yeah.
nobody, no friends, neighbors next door or anything, I'm not sure, honestly.
No, but because do you like in different countries, does your internet work? Or you buy?
Oh, yes, I have. Well, because I do a lot of hiking, I have a satellite device. It's
Oh,
like $400.
that's why you're a professional
Yes,
hiker.
yes, yes. That's why. So I always carry a beacon with me, so I
Uh,
don't need service. Like even when I was in
okay.
Nepal, I was checking with my cousin. I would send checking and I'm okay, and it shows what meters I'm at,
Mm.
what speed I'm moving at, and everything. So she'd just be like, okay, so she could see where I'm back in the U.S. when I'm in Nepal.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Okay.
So I would highly recommend one of those. But also, if you're not like I mean, it's really expensive tool to have. But if you're in somewhere that's remote, I would highly recommend one of those devices, just because it's nice to have the comfort of checking in. And if something happens to you, there is an emergency button on there that you can press. It might take them a few days to get you, but help will come. But you just have to know how to survive until it comes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered today that you would like to add?
Hmm. Let me think. Gosh, okay.
I
My
love
little
how you put,
Portuguese.
how you put some Portuguese words.
Not really. I feel like we've talked a lot about hiking, connecting mental illness,
Yeah.
connecting the fears, like everything. I mean, all I would have to say to people is to not let fear stop you from doing the things that you love. Because I've met so many people on my hikes, especially like older people who are just like, oh, I wish I could do this. And I'm like, why can't you?
Mhm.
And they're using their age, not that they're able bodied. Like, I'm like, did you break your leg, or something? These are like people who think that they're too old. And I'm like, you're never too old to learn something. You're never too old to hike. And even if you're not through hiking during 8 months at a time, just getting out in nature like once a day, even if it's 5 minutes, just sitting in a park, whatever you have around you. Like, I highly, highly like recommend that because nature is so healing and we are all nature. But never let fear ever, ever stop you. As a woman told me on the trail, when I asked her, I ran across this woman on the Continental Divide Trail, and I was like, "Are you afraid of dying?" Because she was 80 years old. And I always ask people this question because I'm afraid of, that's the one thing I'll say. I'm afraid of dying, but I climb some mountains, so I'm facing death a lot. But she's like, no, honey, don't ever be afraid to die. Be afraid to not do everything that you want while you're living because you let fear stop you. And that's something that I want to share with everyone.
What a beautiful message to actually end this. It's beautiful. So thank you for being you. Thank you for everything that that resilience and that courage and that bravery and that self-compassion and self-love that you have. And like, that's what I hear when you tell your story. It's so much that connection with self and where am I, how, and it's okay in getting free of all those, as you said, conditioning and everything.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful, such an inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us in the Life Lessons Lounge. Remember, every story has its wisdom. Join us next time for more insights and inspiration. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep sharing your own story.